as we wish.
Merci beaucoup, Manon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I don't want to take too much time off the top. I know you have a lot of questions for me, and as always, I'm happy to take them. This week in the House, we're wrapping up what has been a very busy fall sitting. Probably the busiest period we've had since forming government last year. And you can see that in what we've been able to accomplish. Nous avons présenté l'énoncé économique d'automne,
We
dans
presented
lequel
the
nous avons
fall economic
dévoilé la
update,
prochaine phase
where we set out the next phase of our plan aimed at realizing progress for the middle class. We signed the free trade agreement with the European Union. It is an agreement that will give Canadian businesses greater access to markets and will help employers create the type of jobs required by Canadian families. In the field of the environment, we announced our plan to establish pricing for pollution caused by carbon. We also presented our protection plan for the oceans, and last week, we disclosed our pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change. This is a plan that will help us to create many well-paid jobs, in addition to leaving our children and our grandchildren a cleaner and more prosperous world.
This fall, I was also able to take Canada's message of openness and optimism onto the world stage at the G20 meetings and at the United Nations in September, and also during trips to China, Cuba, Argentina, Peru, Liberia, and Madagascar. And we've made tremendous progress on a number of other files, from making decisions around pipelines to reopening veterans' service centres to cutting the wait time for family reunification in half. There is, as always, much more work still to be done. Canadians expect our government to continue to work to strengthen and grow the middle class and help those working hard to join it. Je suis impatient de poursuivre notre travail.
I look forward to continuing our work when the House of Commons resumes at the end of January. That is all I have to say now, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
Prime Minister, it's traditional for incoming U.S. presidents to make Canada their first foreign trip. I'm wondering if you have had an opportunity to extend an invitation to President-elect Trump or plan to, and if you have any indication whether he's receptive to doing that.
In my very first conversation with the President-elect the day after his electoral victory, I reminded him of the tradition and certainly extended an invitation for him to come up, and he responded positively. But obviously, we're still working with the incoming administration to finalize.
Okay. I want to ask you about the reports that your government is considering taxing private health care plans. And I'm wondering, is that still something that's on the table right now? And if so, would those revenues that you generated by ending the exemption for those under the Income Tax Act, would they be applied to just general revenues, or would they be funding another program to extend those kind of benefits to other people?
Obviously, we're engaged very much in pre-budget consultations, engaging with stakeholders across the country, engaging with economists and within our government as well on a broad range of departments to look at where there are savings, where there are investments to be made. We are engaged in a tax review, as you know. We're attempting to clean up and simplify a number of things around the tax code. There are boutique tax credits that we felt eliminating. For example, the fitness and sports equipment credit was better served by delivering on a Canada Child benefit that gives more money tax-free every month to Canadians who need it than who don't. But we're always engaged in looking at different ways and to deliver on our commitments and promises to Canadians in ways that grow the middle class and help those that are working hard to join it. But no firm decisions have been made around the particular issue you bring up or a broad range of other issues that may or may not be in the upcoming budget.
Mélanie Marquis, Presse canadienne.
Mélanie Marquis, Presse canadienne. You know that when it comes to health, there was a question of more money with the provinces. Are you ready to extend for a year the application of the annual growth rate of 7% in the field of health and wait a year before signing a new agreement? The conversation I had on Friday on this particular issue that is very important for Canadians both for the federal and provincial governments. It was a very good conversation, and it's something that I've said for a long time. It has hurt our health system to have a government that for almost 10 years was completely disengaged from the issue of health throughout the country. We agreed then that there would be an opportunity to allow our ministers of finance and our ministers of health to work on this. They will be meeting on Monday, and they will be examining how they can better work together to deliver a health system that Canadians expect throughout the country, and I am certainly looking forward to the results of this discussion next Monday. But my question was whether you are ready, where you're opening the door to an extension of the growth rate. I think that people do expect us to act in a measured manner, but also to take immediate action when it comes to health. So I'm quite happy to see that the Ministers of Finance and the Ministers of Health will be meeting on Monday to look at the various options and to examine what possibilities are available.
Hi, I'd like to invite you to take a look back about last year, basically your first year in office, and I would like to know what you feel is your biggest regret of the year.
I think there's, for all the things that we've accomplished, all the big things that I've listed a number of times, that I think we did a very good job on. There's always more to do, and certainly looking at the things that we're hoping to get to in the coming years as we work to fulfill the mandate to grow the economy in ways that help the middle class and those working hard to join it are always going to be top of mind. I think we focus more on the things that we still have to do rather than the things that we've done. But if I had to pick a low point for me personally last year, it was the deaths of 2 Canadians by the Abu Sayyaf group in the Philippines, which was something that obviously was personally difficult for me, as I had the responsibility for directing and articulating the Canadian position, but also the opportunity and the responsibility to speak with their families. I think reflecting on the fact that we live in a very dangerous world and the responsibility that any government has to keep its citizens safe now and in the future needs to be top of mind. And any time situations come up in which we lose lives like that, is going to be difficult for any leader.
Is there anything you feel you could have done differently? Do you regret publicly saying that Canada would not negotiate, would not pay ransoms?
I think people understand, and the Canadians I've spoken with across the country in the months following certainly understand that any other position would not just provide source of significant funds to violent terrorists intent on causing more harm and taking more lives, but it would also endanger further the lives of any Canadian citizen who works, travels, or lives outside of our borders.
Radio-Canada.
Radio Canada. Mr. Trudeau, we know that your government would like to see national standards to protect consumers, but Quebec and a number of other provinces see this as an intrusion in an area of provincial jurisdiction. And furthermore, it could reduce the type of protection of Quebec consumers. So are you willing to allow Quebec to have its own system in the case of C-29? The particular issue that we are dealing with here is that we want to ensure that Canadians do have adequate protection in the sectors that are regulated by the federal government. This is something that is important, and we want to have a very strong protection throughout the country, and that is the same level throughout the country. I recognize that there are jurisdictions that do have higher protection standards than others, but I'm certainly very confident that we will be able to work together to ensure that all consumers throughout the country will have a high level of protection in sectors that are regulated by the federal government. This does continue to be an issue that we have been working on very closely with our provincial partners, particularly Quebec. Would it be acceptable, as I said at the outset, that Quebec consumers would agree to be less well protected? And do you think that this is likely to go before the Supreme Court? What we'd like to ensure is that consumers throughout the country are protected at the highest level. It is important for us, and as I already explained, I'm happy to see that we are working on this very closely with our provincial counterparts.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. A report by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the average Canadian childcare costs are climbing 3 times faster than inflation. A lot of families still finding it difficult to afford. I understand you brought in the Canada Child Benefit. It's indexed to inflation. But for those families for whom that still has not made it affordable, what else is your government prepared to do?
We are, as we committed to do, engaged in investing significant amounts of money in social infrastructure, which primarily includes housing investments and looking at childcare. We understand how the approaches to childcare vary across provinces as they have responsibilities for delivering on childcare, and that's why we are engaged very closely in discussions with provincial jurisdictions to look at how we can help Canadians who are indeed facing increasing childcare costs. The fact is, as you pointed out, the Canada Child Benefit, which delivers more money tax-free every month to the families who need it by doing less for the wealthiest families, has gone a significant way towards helping a number of families. We'll be reducing child poverty in this country by 40%, lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. But there is still more to do on this specific area of childcare, and that's one of the things that we're very much working on for the coming months and year.
Are you still ruling out a national childcare plan?
I think we recognize that the federal nature of Canada means any national perspective on childcare will have 10, possibly plus 3, very different ways of approaching it. And I think that's one of the strengths and challenges of our federal system. And as I've always said, I look forward to engaging with the premiers and the provinces on these issues to ensure that all Canadians across the country have opportunity to both work and raise their families in the way that they want to.
TVA.
Bonjour. Est-ce que votre gouvernement va...
Can you tell us whether the government will be bringing back subsidies? As I already said a few times, a number of weeks now, Canadians can be reassured that at the federal level, one of our strictest rules for political funding is that all the different governments throughout the country do have the same level of transparency and accountability as is in the federal system. They can be assured then that the Liberal Party will be following all the rules and principles underlying the federal funding system, the type of things that the Canadian can expect. But as I said, I'm open to any discussions or suggestions on a way of reinforcing or strengthening the confidence of Canadians in our political institutions. There was some question of entrenching in the Canadian Electoral Act the guidelines that you gave to your department last year. We are certainly looking at ways of strengthening the trust that Canadians have in our institutions and our political system. But once again, I want to be able to reassure Canadians that that we do have very strict rules at the federal level and that they are followed.
Last week, you talked about launching a process with Justice Minister Wilson-Raybould about decolonializing Canada's federal laws. What does that mean, decolonializing?
It basically means looking at the impacts of the wide swath of federal laws and legal frameworks to remove and to eliminate the elements that instead of providing justice and opportunities for reconciliation, have been impediments for opportunities and growth and success of Indigenous communities.
All right, as we approach the noon hour, just going to be letting you know we are continuing to listen to the Prime Minister's remarks as he takes questions from reporters. Jennifer Burke will pick up the coverage from here as we, again, continue to listen to the Prime Minister speaking to reporters this morning on a variety of issues, both domestic and abroad.
At the forefront of the federal government's approach, unlike how it is now.
Well, wouldn't that process lead you to what AFN National Chief Bellegarde said last week, constitutional talks, given the tension between Section 35 and a division of federal and provincial powers in the Constitution? Canada was formed with our First Nations bill. How does that not lead to that point?
I think a significant part of the agenda of reconciliation that we have right now is looking at concrete and tangible ways in which the relationship can be improved, in which we will be giving significant opportunities to Indigenous people to succeed, investments in education that will close the parity gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, look at healthcare and outcomes, look at challenges around social and community determinants of success. There's an awful lot to do. I think there's no sense that we have exhausted all concrete and practical approaches to improving this relationship in the immediate, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to do.
Canadian Press.
Mr. Trudeau, you continue to say that you're committed to your promise that 2015 would be the last election under your first past the post. How do you intend to get there, given we're running out of time? Your all-party committee Liberals have not agreed with the opposition members. They're arguing there's not enough time. The Chief Electoral Officer says you're running out of time. And you don't seem to have an agreement on what kind of electoral system Canadians want. So how are you going to get there?
The fact is, we've always known that this is an issue that many Canadians have very strong and different opinions on, how best to reform our electoral system in a way that reflects the desires of Canadians to have a good government that listens to their concerns, to have robust and diverse representation within the House of Commons. There's a lot of different perspectives on it, and that's why I'm so excited about the mydemocracy.ca website that gives people an opportunity to weigh in on the values and the preferences that they have in regards to our electoral system and in regards to our governance structures. The fact is, not having a specific model to endorse or to push for Canadians is an advantage for them when they look at what kind of principles and values are driving their electoral choices, and that's exactly what the mydemocracy.ca questionnaire is all about, and I encourage everyone to continue to log on and participate in because it gives us a better approach on what Canadians are thinking.
But, sorry, just to come back to that, though, I mean, you're not asking people for any specific questions on a model that they would prefer. So how are you going to determine what it is that Canadians want and do it in time for June, basically?
We've created a number of different ways that Canadians can engage. There were direct town halls done by the minister, done by parliamentarians in the ridings across the country that were extremely well attended. We had an electoral reform committee that did very serious and very good work over the past months, even though they weren't able to come up with a single unifying recommendation. There are many strong recommendations and elements in there that will inform next steps. And on top of that, there is an opportunity for Canadians to directly weigh in on that. But any government is going to be faced on an important issue with a broad range of issues, a broad range of views on any given issue, and it is up to the government to figure out the way forward that respects the broad range of views and the concerns that Canadians are expressing through many different ways.
La presse.
La presse. The sound is not good enough for the interpreter to understand. It was not possible because the First Nations, they would like these programs to be recognized by the government. I'd like to know whether you're open to any constitutional discussions on this request from the First Nations. We are demonstrating the extent to which Aboriginal organizations and organizations throughout the country do have an important perspective to bring to our discussions. And it is clear that this is not simply a pan-Canadian framework dealing with climate change, but on a number of issues. Indigenous voices are important in coming up with the right answer. And as I said on many occasions, it is essential for me to establish relations based on respect, on openness, on listening, and on rights. And I'm very satisfied with the type of balance that was established, where Indigenous leaders and Indigenous representatives are present for a part of the discussion, and they are involved in decision-making. But we also recognize at the same time that in meetings with the premiers, in a type of a formal meeting, we'll have to continue with the Prime Minister of Canada and his 10, or rather 13 counterparts. So are you shutting down the door to any constitutional discussions? As I've always maintained in this mandate, and as part of our responsibilities in the government, we are focusing on growth for the middle class. That has been working very hard to make ends meet. We're talking about economic growth that will go along with this. And we are looking for a renewal in our relationship with the Indigenous community. We want to demonstrate Canada's strong presence in the world. These are matters that require a great deal of energy and attention, and we are not going to be concentrating on constitutional squabbles.
The fundraisers that you've been holding, the 24 or so that you personally headlined, has anyone at the fundraisers ever discussed or tried to discuss government policy with you? And if they did, how did you handle it at the time? And did you report any of that content to the appropriate oversight authorities?
I think as people have seen from my approach over this past year, I and my entire government make ourselves extremely available to Canadians through a broad range of venues, through town halls, through press conferences like this, through conversations with Canadians in community centres and consultations across the country. And anytime I meet anyone, they will have questions for me, or they will take the opportunity to talk to Prime Minister about things that are important to them. But the fact is, my approach continues to be to listen broadly through every different opportunity that I get and make the right decisions based on what's good for Canada. And I can say that in various Liberal Party events, I listen to people as I will in any given situation, but the decisions I take in government are ones based on what is right for Canadians and not on what a individual in a fundraiser might say.
But on that, Prime Minister, the first examples you listed are all events that happen in public and under the public eye. The fundraisers are private events where money is exchanged to the political party. So these things aren't supposed to be discussed by your own standards. So are you confident that these events, you're living up to the standards that you set for your ministers and publish on your webpage?
I think on the contrary, there are many, many events that I hold, whether it's with municipal leaders, whether it's roundtables with small business owners or business leaders, whether it's meetings meeting with first responders and security officials across the country that aren't public events, that are events where we talk about the issues that matter to Canadians. And that this is a government that is extraordinarily open to multiple perspectives. And that's we always have. And at no point do attending a fundraiser give particular or special access on policy to anyone.
Est-ce que vous êtes prêt pour une dernière question?
Are you willing to answer a last question?
Weekend, Mr. Trump said something you've been saying for a long time, that the F-35 program is way too expensive. How vindicated do you feel by his comment?
Oh, I think the fact is, Canadians have seen that over the past decade, the previous government completely botched the procurement process for fighter jets. And we needed a process that would be an open competition to allow the merits of the various airplanes that could be replacing our fighter fleet to be examined in a rational and responsible way. There has been far too much rhetoric on all sides of which plane we need to pick or not pick. I think we recognize that having failed to replace the CF-18s in a timely manner by an open and transparent competition. The previous government left us in a situation where we are currently unable to live up to our responsibilities under NORAD and NATO at the same time. Which means we have had to go with an interim process to make sure that we are giving the men and women of the Canadian Forces the tools they need, that we are protecting our own airspace in Canada, living up to our continental responsibilities, and also able to fulfill our international responsibilities. This is a process that, yes, we wouldn't have to be going through an interim supplying process if the previous government had actually been able to do the procurement job that they had been tasked with, but they were unable to, and therefore we are doing a interim purchasing of 18 Super Hornets while we prepare the deep and responsible open competition that will lead to the many dozens of new planes that we're going to need in the coming decades.
And secondly, if Mr. Trump, through his actions, does manage to cut the cost of the F-35, how much more likely does that mean? Do you think that would make Canada to actually buy this plane? As
I've said, it's an open and transparent competition we're going to be engaged in, and the various aircraft and aircraft producers will have an opportunity to make their best case and demonstrate the value they are offering to the Canadian Forces and to Canada. That's why it's important that we do what has been unable to be done over the past years, which is a genuine, rigorous, open competition to replace our aging fighter jets. That's something that Canadians expect us to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. Yes.